Good morning.
Good morning.
Seems like there are a few emptier seats than before, but whoever isn't here, I want you to know that I did both shower and brush my teeth this month, so it's good to be here with you. There's an old Navy adage that goes, collision at sea can ruin your whole day. In case any of you are about to head off on a sea voyage, I don't want you to worry. That saying is rarely meant literally. It's a reminder, really, that out on the high seas, there are rules in place to protect against those ruined days. Rules that prescribe exactly what should happen when two ships are on a collision course. Those rules work extremely well, unless they don't. There are occasions when ships can find themselves in situations where they no longer apply, where it would take unprescribed, extraordinary action to avoid disaster. Ships in that situation are called in extremis. When in extremis, the usual rules no longer apply. The only rule remaining is to do whatever it takes to keep your ship safe. My question to you this morning isn't about ships at sea. It's about us. Our country, our world, and I suppose our communities, including this one, and our individual lives. The question is, should we continue under the usual rules of propriety, or are we in extremis, where we need to reconsider the usual rules? The other day, a friend and I were trying to identify the most effective issues that might actually influence politicians and other figures who seem enthralled by forces hell-bent on destroying our fragile democracy. What are the best arrows in our quivers? Not our daily laments, but concerns that if they could be made a part of the national dialogue, might strike an enthusiastic, widespread accord, especially with folks we're clearly not reaching now. Concerns that, if promulgated forcefully enough, might dissuade, say, legislators and jurists and publishers from cowering under perceived threats from on high. Faced with an unprecedented erosion of truth and freedom, as well as a wide swath of the population that seems to applaud that, how do we strike the right chord in response? My friend and I both preferred honing in on a few key issues, the economy, for example, or the Epstein files, or the president's increasingly visible ineptitude, all of which, along with perhaps a few other mind-blowing offenses, a majority of Americans might be amenable to actually caring about if, and it's a big if, those concerns can find an effective message from a popular, charismatic messenger. But where is that voice? Where is the united leadership of the opposition? I scour the news and the internet every day and encounter no shortage of cries about the latest outrage. Can you believe it, we hear and read again and again. Isn't it horrible, we hear and often moan ourselves. But it seems to me that those plaints just disappear into the ether, lost in a cloud of new distractions, overwhelmed by a cacophony of the day's new round of attacks on what we so recently used to believe was unassailable. The voices I most often hear seem to believe we can still operate under the usual rules of the road, led by the same tired and overmatched voices. But I know I'm not the only one who wonders if we can. So again I ask, where's the leadership? We know what's wrong, but find ourselves floundering in the face of it as we face a potentially cataclysmic collision. Where is somebody or some bodies who can capture the attention and backing of the millions of souls who seem to march to such a different drummer from ours? And I wonder, how much are we the problem? Maybe the devotion to propriety, so characteristic of progressive liberalism, rather than painting us in admirable hues of moral rectitude, instead shows us to be a toothless, aging collection of yesterday's news, woefully out of touch with the widespread, contagious, inchoate frustration and rage among millions of people out there, millions of voters who found a voice they can respond to in the very figure or figures we find so abhorrent. We've all seen some public figures out there who see things as I believe we see them. Politicians and former politicians, talking heads on TV, actors, comedians, jurists, and public advocates, academicians, a few courageous business leaders, even an occasional religious figure who write insightful and profound essays and books and postings, or find some way to have their say, and in some cases actually have an impact of sorts. And yet, what does it all add up to? Perhaps it adds up to more than I realize. Perhaps all those people speaking out, often quite courageously, for democracy and civility and the rule of law are having an impact. Perhaps collectively they're inching us back towards a world that seems more safe and sane. I hope they are, but I have to say I'm not feeling it. Not yet. I'm not seeing it in the untold millions out there who can't seem to find enough snake oil to buy or Kool-Aid to drink. And if you're not seeing it either, isn't it time to ask in as loud a voice as we can muster, why the hell not? We're running out of time here. Here's a hard truth. Whatever used to keep us more or less safely and sanely governed has been tossed over for a new paradigm. The usual rule book has been thrown out, but too many of us seem only vaguely aware of it. There is an abundance of outrage surging on both red and blue ships as they rush towards collision. But only the red vessel seems to recognize that there's something very appealing and empowering about seeing propriety taken down a few notches. My calling, if you will, as an Episcopal priest had a lot to do with the man who ordained me. Bishop Paul Moore Jr. was a social activist from the time he opened his rectory in Jersey City to every unhoused, hungry passerby seeking refuge, to when he became a nationally known civil rights leader marching in Selma and Washington with his friend Martin Luther King. In the mid-'70s, when New York City was facing bankruptcy, He famously preached on Easter Sunday how the corporations and millionaires leaving the city for more favorable tax shores were like rats leaving a sinking ship. A powerful and effective headline metaphor, even if not one likely to open the wallets of his church's biggest contributors. Paul was himself the scion of a very wealthy family, and in some ways, I guess, a model of propriety, but not when it came to justice and freedom and human rights and dignity, where his progressive voice was powerful, far-reaching, and unrestrained from telling it as it was. Perhaps he'd learned as a Marine on Guadalcanal how to fight when the stakes are about as high as they can get. Where is that kind of voice now? I'm sorry to say I listened but failed to hear it from within the church that ordained me, save for an occasional utterance as when Bishop Buddy of Washington appealed directly for a measure of mercy to the newly installed MAGA leaders seated before her. And I'm sorry to say I'm not really hearing it from the denomination under whose roof I've gathered for going on 7 years now. Still considering myself new to and underinformed about UUism, I'm a bit hesitant to criticize, but I do wonder if one of the great UU strengths can at times become a liability. How can I put this? Are we, out of a well-developed sense of propriety, sometimes too polite, too restrained, too gentle? Are we so absorbed with UUism that we fail to address the elephant in the room? Does our commitment to as broad a principle of diversity, equity, and inclusion as there may be out there, a noble commitment in my view, but does it leave us ill-equipped to fight effectively in the trenches where very powerful forces have brought the battle? Are we so constrained from uttering anything that might possibly hurt someone's feelings that we end up fighting for the things that are most crucial with at least one hand tied behind our back? Well, I'm not sure I'm informed enough to say so for sure, but more and more lately, that's how it feels to me. It feels as if we're saying and doing a lot of good things that distinguish and reinforce, at least to ourselves, who we are, but still fall short of ensuring our ship can stay afloat. And if that ship does go under, and you better believe that it might, that like the fragile planet we share, it's already in extremis, then everything we've already accomplished or hope to achieve will almost certainly go down with it. Let me close with an analogy from the New Testament. Right now, I feel as dispirited as one of Jesus' disciples after he's been hauled off to the tomb. Awakening each day to all the limitations and powerlessness of my 80 years, I long for another strong voice to lead me, to lead us. While grateful for my fellow disciples, you, that I know I can turn to for solace and even a measure of strength, I'm afraid that isn't enough. I'm terrified that even our combined voices are insufficient to the moment. Yes, at least as their story has been told, those disciples' concerns and fears were allayed as they rediscovered the mojo they'd lost. But what about us? Will we find what it takes to stop floundering? I'd like to think I'm ready to follow the leader I seek anywhere she or he or they might lead me, lead us, even out to the bloodied streets if that's what it takes. What about you? Are you ready? I think we're going to need each other to get us where we need to go. And if we don't need to resort to a radically different way to get there, I think at the very least we need to question ruthlessly what's working and what isn't. Amen.